there's two types of parents. There's one who traumatize their kids and they realize what it is. And then there's the parent that doesn't realize they already traumatized their kids in a way, right?
Yeah. We all come out a bit damaged, right? One way or the other. It's just a matter of which way.
I go in knowing that they're probably going to be carrying something with them that we've said or how we've reacted or how we've just disciplined him the wrong way, gave him like the wrong look. There's always going to be something.
Yeah.
Right? And you can't be the perfect parent. There's always going to be some cracks somewhere.
All right, welcome to the Capable Dads podcast. Thanks so much for joining with us today. Today we're going to be talking about being the change instead of staying the course. And what this topic's about, going to be talking about how are we as parents, how do we kind of decide what kind of parents we want to be for our kids, and where did that come from? You know, what is like when we were kids and what we experienced as kids. So I kind of want to start off the discussion today talking about the languages of love. Not sure if you guys have ever heard of that or discussed that before.
No.
We don't talk about love at my place.
Okay, all right. So
we just express it.
My understanding is there's 5 languages of love, and the 5 languages of love include physical touch,
mm-hmm.
words of affirmation,
mm-hmm.
gift giving,
mm-hmm.
Acts of service,
mm-hmm.
and quality time. And those 5 languages of love are essentially the way individuals show that they love somebody else. And at the same time, it's also how you receive love. I think, as kids, we don't understand this stuff. And I don't think you process this as kids. And even as adults, I think most adults out there probably don't even talk about this concept.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I think it's such an important concept to know. Number one, it's important to, I think, identify how you view yourself showing love to your kids. And at the same time, understanding how you as a person receive love, because that could be from your spouse, from your kid. And I think understanding that will hopefully improve your ability to connect with the people that you care about and the people that you love.
Cool concept. I haven't really thought about it too much, to be honest. But, just in reflecting, I think myself and my family and, generationally, what I've noticed is it's definitely the physical touch on our side. There's always roughhousing,
right?
Always playing. There's always hugging,
mm-hmm.
Always tickling. Like just like there's a lot of physical touch, and I think that's how we show our affection and love for each other. And I think that's how my parents showed it for me, personally, and I see that actually continuing with my children as well. It's kind of cool to put it in that context, though, that there are different ways as well, and you can see that differently. Like different people have different family structures and and whatnot. So, but what about you guys? To unpack it a bit, what are your love languages, and how do you express it with your children and your children primarily? I think.
Yeah, I think so. Before I get into that, I want to ask you. That's how you felt your family, your parents communicated love to you. Did you feel like you received it that way?
Yeah, I'd have to say I think it did.
Okay.
I'd have to reflect on that a lot more. It's
like you never felt, you never questioned your parents' love for you.
Well, being the third in a family of 4, you sometimes question it a bit. You know? You're kind of a middle child lost in the fray. So
yeah.
But no, I don't think I ever questioned it. But necessarily I definitely didn't think of it that lens, and I'd have to go back through the old reels and understand it a bit. And, maybe there's some moments after this conversation that will pop up in my mind, and, I can look at them with a slightly different lens, and maybe something will creep up that we can circle back on another conversation, I think. But
that's exactly what I was thinking about when Caesar was listing all the different languages. And I was going back to analyze what I understood from my parents and what I perceived as a kid going through it. And obviously my parents were immigrants, and they came from a totally different culture that's not alien to me, but growing up with Western media being shown what a nuclear family was like,
Right.
being shown what real acceptance in a family unit was like, that played a lot of mind games with me. I never questioned their love. Like, I knew they want me there. I knew they cared about me. But at the same time, I never felt it. Does that make sense?
Well, that's exactly what I mean. Like, when I was asking Brendan, did it connect with you? So clearly, it sounds like Brendan, it did connect, and you did feel loved.
Yeah, I think so.
Where
Message received.
exactly.
Right?
Message received.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but maybe for you, Stan, you the way they were trying to demonstrate their love for you, it just didn't connect with you.
Like, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this a little bit more, but I know, for example, my dad, he didn't grow up with a father figure. My grandfather left China when he was young, and he kind of grew up bouncing around, being just like a little kid,
Yeah.
right? And you could kind of see how he was raised by the way he raised me. There was not a lot of intimacy. There was not a lot of guidance. There was a time where
This is your father
this
or
is
your
my
grandfather?
father.
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
both. I guess
So
my
it's like your
grandfather
grandfather.
kind of left my dad in China by himself, right? And well, my dad never left me, but he was never there in the forefront, right? There was a time where I described my dad as kind of like an extra in the back of the movie that was me, that was Stan. But at the same time, I was never hungry. I always had food in my on my table, right? When I needed a ride, he was always there to pick me up or drop me off. So there was some stuff that he could do, but at the same time, I never felt that, he loved me wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and I think the idea of what does love actually mean, what does love look like to you, is maybe different than what it is with them.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say, like, my experience is pretty similar to Stan, and not definitely probably not the same, but I felt that disconnect as well. Like, I felt, when I look back at it, and if I ever had that conversation with my parents of, do you actually love me? They'll be like, of course I do. And I think, for my parents, like, I think their way of showing me they love me was to make sure that I had money, I had an education, I had any material I needed to survive. But they were never really, they didn't really tell me the things like your classic stereotype is Asian kids never hear that their parents are proud of them, that their parents love them. And that's, I would say, like a lot of Asian kids feel that way. Not
A lot
all.
of Western Asian kids feel that.
A lot of Western, but sure. But I think that's and then when you're talking about the cultural discrepancies, that's a huge thing, because I think I agree with you. Watching movies where you see these families hugging, kissing, saying that they love each other, do all these things in our mind, we're visualizing, oh, that's what love looks like, and that's how people show they love each other. I didn't get that. I don't feel like. So does that mean my parents don't love me? And I felt it as an adult when I really reflected on it. I'm like, man, did my parents actually love me or not? And obviously, now that I've studied these languages of love and all that, I'm like, oh, they love me by providing for me, giving me things, and so it allows me to, I guess, connect with them now to be like, yeah, that's how you showed me that you love me. It may not be how I receive it, and maybe I prefer if you hugged me more, or I preferred it if you kind of told me you're proud of me a little bit more. But I understand that that's how you showed your love for me.
Yeah. That's interesting that the two of, culturally, you two are a bit more similar than me.
Yeah.
Can you tell?
Yeah. Yeah, if you can't tell. But you guys had very similar experiences, and, there's obviously some differences between Eastern and Western cultures that, it seems like they're coming through as well, right?
Right.
But one thing I wanted to dissect a bit more was, were both your parents working, and was it the same for your mom and your dad?
Yes. So both my parents, when I was growing up, were working, and they worked a lot. They there were times where I saw them for 5 minutes right before I went to bed, because that's when they would come home, and either they would be gone early the next morning, or I would be gone early the next morning. And it's very seldom that during the week I saw them. So maybe that was the only opportunity they had to show me that they still care and they're around, by sending me to private school, by putting me through these classes, right? Getting me a tutor, right?
Yeah.
So these things are their only opportunity to support me, right? I see that now, and I kind of had to interpret it now through the love language. Right. But back then, as a kid, I'm like, they're just throwing money at a problem.
Yep.
I resented it. I didn't like it. I carried that chip on my shoulder for a long time.
Me too.
I still kind of do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? They only knew that one language.
Yeah, and
They weren't bilingual.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to put your feelings into their head. I don't know if you guys asked them that specifically and really got that level from them, because it sounds like it could also be situational as well, right?
Well, I think that's
like if they're working ridiculous hours,
Right.
they might not have the opportunity or the bandwidth at the end of the day to go that extra bit.
I don't think anything's ever in isolation. I think
Yeah, good point.
everything is a continuation of something prior. And so the answer is yes, I did bring it up with my mom and asked her, like, hey, why did you not say those things to me? Why didn't you tell me that you loved me? Why didn't you tell me that you were proud of me? And now she does. She makes an effort to kind of say it a little more now that she knows it. It means a lot to me. But I do think, and I after kind of dissecting a lot of this concept, I've forgiven my parents a lot for a lot of the resentment that I think similar to Stan I had from my parents when I was younger. But the idea, both my parents were working. They worked really long hours, so often I wouldn't see them at all. I go to school in the morning, they go to work, I go to bed before they came home from work, and so my only chance to really see my parents was usually the weekends, and even then it was like quite sparse because they worked 7 days a week, just a little bit fewer hours on the weekends. But what may be different from Stan, and I don't know your parents' background, but from my parents' background, they both came from very poor backgrounds. Mm-hmm. So when they grew up from my understanding, they grew up with very little, if not zero money. And so their entire life, they want to build their career because of them. To them, they thought, I had nothing as a kid. I need to make as much money as possible so that I can give my kid what I didn't have, right? I had no materials as a kid. I want to give my kid all the materials in the world. So they never have to worry about money, food, school, and all that. So the way they structured their life when they moved to Canada was, I'm going to work my ass off. I'm going to get as much money so that my kids never have to worry about money. And so that's naturally, that's how they're going to demonstrate their love for me, is that they work so hard to get as much money as possible so that I don't have to worry about money.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can't blame them for that, because they didn't have, and this is kind of where I want to get to in this conversation is, I think a lot of times parents try to give their kids what they didn't have.
Yeah, totally.
Right. So my parents, they grew up with no materials. Therefore, they want to give me all the materials.
Yep.
Where I feel like I grew up with no love, affection, and all that. Now I want to give that all to my kids. I want to give them so much affection. I hug them all the time. I kiss them all the time. I tell them I love them. I'm proud of them so much now, because I feel like that was a missing part of my childhood. And that's the change I'm making from what my parents gave to me versus what I give to my kids.
I completely understand where you're coming from. I don't have the best relationship with my parents. I used to work with my parents. I got sucked into the family business as...
That can be tough.
That is tough, right? And at the beginning, I thought it was fine. I thought it was good. they wanted to step back. They wanted to slow down, I thought, right? And I made the business something that was completely different from what they wanted, right? Because if we stayed on that same route, the business would have died out. Manufacturing in Canada is on a decline, and if we didn't pivot, it wouldn't have worked. And that strategy, I didn't include them in it, and they didn't understand it, and I think they kind of resented me for that. And it came to a tipping point right as I had Evan. And that really was like kind of the last nail in the coffin. I was kind of done
Yeah.
with them.
That's hard.
But to see them now, to see how they are with my kids, I know if they've changed a lot. To see how they are with my brother and with my sister, I see that they've changed a lot. I still have a wall up, right? So as long as everyone around me is benefiting from this, right, then I'm cool.
Yeah.
Like I could see that everyone is working hard to make sure everyone is loved and happy and accepted, right? But for me, I don't really ask for anything in that relationship anymore.
Yeah. That's hard, man. I mean, it's hard to have that wall up. Right?
It is, and when it's up, it's pretty strong. I'm Chinese. I'm really great at building walls.
Yeah, I think we all are.
Right. I don't know. So have I asked my mom if she loved me or not? No. No, I haven't. Neither have I asked my dad.
Yeah.
Right.
Did you feel like you needed to?
I didn't. No, I didn't feel like I wanted to know or cared to know.
Yeah.
At this point, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, just feeling like you need to ask, I guess, in your case, kind of just proves something in itself, right? It's like,
Yeah, number one, the question is, do you want to know? And are you prepared for the answer? In all honesty, I do believe almost universally that parents love their kids.
Yeah.
Almost universally. I mean, there's always going to be exceptions, but I do think that a lot of kids don't know that their parents love them. And that's, I think, where this conversation is meant to happen, right? Because I think every parent loves their kids the way they can show them that they love them.
Mm-hmm.
But that kid may not understand it. And if you don't understand it, like any other language, if one person speaking one language, the other person speaking a different language, they have no idea what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter what that person's trying to tell the other person because they don't understand their language. So understanding that language is such an important part of building that connection, if that's something you want to do. If you want to repair something, or if you want to not pass on certain traumas and all that, I think having that communication is such an important thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, to be honest. I was just thinking of ways that you can intentionally now bringing that into being aware of that. Like, how do you bring that forward currently to your kids? Like,
Well,
how do you intentionally structure it that way so that, there's...
Yeah, it's tricky because I think they're so young right now. I don't think they know how they like to receive love.
I mean, I'm still unraveling it, right? Like right now, just it's kind of a new concept for me.
So I think the way I do it, and I don't know if this is the right way to do it, but the way I'm doing it, I'm trying to give them everything. I'm trying to give them all 5 languages and everything I possibly give them, and then
smother them.
Exactly, just give them everything I can. And I may or may not be succeeding with it, but I try to be mindful of it. And I try to give them all 5 languages as best I can. And then when they become of that age where they can actually start understanding themselves, understand their identity, and how they like to receive love, hopefully they can feed it back to me and be like, Dad, either yes, we connected and I received your love and I completely appreciate that, or they'd be like, Dad, I really wish you showed me a little bit more of this. I wish you, told me more that you love
Yeah.
me, or I wish you, took care of me more, and, spend more time, some quality time with me. And then, obviously that hopefully I have to have my humility and my modesty to be like, thank you for sharing that with me, and I will try to change and try to do that. But as of this moment, I'm trying to give them every possible way.
Just touch on all bases almost.
Yeah.
And, hopefully it one of them strikes with their type. I think you probably. I suspect that we're probably not going to be able to have those conversations with our children, just given their age and
Right.
mental maturity and emotional maturity.
Right.
But I do think you'll be able to probably pull it apart if you start noticing like behavior potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think
if they're sad, upset, angry about something, then you could maybe, there's usually something there that you can unpack, right?
Yeah, I mean, just my daughter, she loves cuddling. She loves hugs. If she could be hugged the entire day, she would love it. Versus my son, I try to hug him. He's like, "Oh, get away from me." So that to me is, I'm trying not to look into it too much and analyze it too much. But that to me may be a signal. Like maybe my son doesn't like touch as much, and maybe he wants to just spend more time me building Lego with him. He really loves the idea of me building his racetracks and building Lego with him. He likes that. So maybe spending quality time is the way he wants to be appreciated.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying to give him all, but I'm starting to see a little bit of kind of movement in certain directions.
Yeah.
There's two types of parents. There's one who traumatize their kids and they realize what it is. And then there's the parent that doesn't realize they have already traumatized their kids in a way, right?
Yeah. We all come out a bit damaged, right? One way or the other. It's
Exactly.
just a matter of which way.
I go in knowing that they're probably going to be carrying something with them that we've said or how we've reacted or how we've I don't know, just disciplined him the wrong way, gave him like the wrong look. There's always going to be something.
Yeah.
Right? And you can't be the perfect parent. There's always going to be some cracks somewhere. Right? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of times where the kids, I encourage them to use their words, and they do say, I don't like this family. I don't like you right now.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine. That's them going through their emotions. Right? I don't like to hear it, but I know they don't mean it.
Yeah.
No, I think that's like usually when they're, in my experience with my girls, when they have, like, they've had outbursts like that as well. And, usually like, hey, why were you feeling that way? And, there's usually something, and it's okay that they're going through that, right? And yeah, maybe you fucked up here or there. And, it's important to have some humility too, I think, right?
To kind of respond to what you said, Stan, I like to think that they don't mean it. But I've been trying recently to tell myself maybe they do mean it.
You're trying to tell yourself they do mean it?
The reason why I'm saying that is because if I tell myself they don't mean it, it takes the pressure all off of me.
Mm-hmm.
It tells me like, well, they don't mean it, so I'm not going to do anything about it. Versus I tell myself, maybe they do mean it. Maybe they do feel it. It may not be something they actually feel all the time, but in this moment, they don't like me.
Okay. Yeah.
And so by me telling myself that, yeah, maybe they do mean it at this moment, it gives me pause. It makes me think, what is it that I said? What is it that I did that made them feel this way? And as Brent said, it gives me humility. It makes me be like, okay, maybe I did say something. Maybe I did do something to make them feel this way. So let's see what I can ask. So I asked them. So I asked my daughter, well, why did you just say that you don't like me? And then she'll be honest. She'll be like, well, it's because you she and this is something that's real. She said to me, well, because you use your angry voice, you use your scary voice. And I'm like, oh, what does a scary voice mean? And it's like, well, you were yelling at me, and I didn't like that. So even though she's only 6, she knows when she doesn't like something. And so
Oh, yeah.
the way she communicates to me is, "I don't like you, Daddy. I don't like the way you are right now. You're scary." And in my mind, it'd be easy for me to say, "No, of course she likes me. She loves me. She loves playing with me." And I look at the big picture. Of course she loves me. But in this moment, in this minute that we're interacting, she doesn't like me. And I need to know why. What is it? What is it about this moment that she doesn't like? And then I hopefully can give her the opportunity to explain to me what she's feeling, and so that to me is it's a opportunity to bond with my kid and get to know them a little better, and then for them to feel safe to be honest with me, and that I'm not going to shame them for saying that. I'm not going to penalize them for saying that to me. I'm going to be inquisitive and give them an opportunity to kind of talk this through, so that hopefully when they get older, we can build on that communication.
Yeah, that's the foundation of it. It's not taking it personally at that moment, and actually reflecting on it is
Yes.
important. It's like, was what you did when you raised your voice, was it appropriate?
Right.
Like, did you just do it because you were pissed off and
Exactly.
you had some emotions that
My own trauma that's coming out.
yeah,
right?
yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
something else is coming out. You're pissed off at work. You got an argument with your spouse, and then it's coming through at the kids, and it's like, okay, you didn't deserve it in that, or maybe they were about to like start a fire in the house, and
Yeah, and it's justified.
and then it's justified, and then
Yeah.
you can explain. But whatever the reason is, you can rationalize it one way or the other, and a thinking adult can work through that, and that's super valuable communication. So
Right.
it
One thing that I do try to do is sometimes when I get wild up and they have me on my last thread of sanity, I do lose it.
Yeah.
All right. Like
We all do.
and I'm not proud of it. I do scream at the top of my lungs if they are having like a meltdown just to snap them out of it. The one thing that I do focus on afterwards is the mending of the
Yes.
situation, the mending of the relationship, of the perspective of what has happened. I will always be the first one to apologize in a fight, even if they were the one that like broke the glass or I don't know, did something wrong. I would approach it after the timeout, after everything's settled down. I would go, we would de-escalate, and maybe not the first one to apologize, but I will apologize regardless.
Right.
The words "I'm sorry" would always be in there,
Right.
right? Just to let them know that I can see in myself that I did something wrong to hurt you, right? Even though you might not like it, that's how I expressed myself. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
yeah.
right?
The preemptive thing that I've seen a couple parents do. It's just if the kids are getting like, and I've done a couple times, but if you're like at your wit's end, sometimes it's just best just to leave. Be like, just don't say anything. Just be like, okay, I'm done. Like I'm not going to add any value. Just go.
Before something
Yeah.
gets worse.
Before you yell at them or
Yeah.
you lose your cool. Like we're humans too. We're not perfect. You know,
Yeah.
It's a great strategy. But also, when you have conflict, it's inevitable. It's always going to happen. One thing I always like to look at in the conflict is acknowledge that you have some fault likely in it, and acknowledge your fault in it, and owning up to it, like you said, and saying sorry and unraveling that will often defuse the situation, and then allow them to also own up and defuse it as well, and then that can help resolve a lot of conflict as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of times kids, especially when they're really young, they see things very black and white. And to be honest, for me, up until probably recently, I saw things very, very black and white. But especially for kids, it's either right or wrong. It's either good or bad. So I think it's important to have those conversations to bring up the idea, this may have happened because, you did something to cause us breaking a glass or something like that. But maybe I shouldn't have given you a glass to begin with. Maybe I shouldn't have put the glass so close to the edge of the table. Maybe I shouldn't have filled the glass so full, and so then when it broke, that it splashed everywhere, kind of thing. So I think sharing that responsibility with your kid demonstrates to them that it may be not black and white. Like sure, they may have knocked it over the hand and it fell on the ground, broke, but what led up to that point could also have been part of my own kind of doing and all that. And for them to understand that it's not right or wrong. It's not all your fault kind of thing. Like I had a part in this as well. I think kind of teaches them that, shared responsibility and, that nothing's isolated. Nothing's ever an isolated situation. There's always something that led up to the eventual thing that pissed everybody off kind of thing.
So, one thing I want to ask, we're talking about yelling at our kids. How did your parents discipline you guys growing up? Were you scared of your parents when you did something wrong?
Oh, hell yeah. We had I don't know about you guys, but we were part of the generation of the belt. So there was definitely
You got some belt?
Yeah,
belt?
I mean, that was, when we were misbehaving, and we probably deserved it too. We were always, bouncing off the walls, breaking things, like three brothers just going wild. So,
how close are your brothers to you? Like
one's 5 years older, one's 2 years older, and then I have a younger sister who's 2 years younger as well. So,
but she was like out of the rough housing.
No, she was. She didn't roughhouse at all. She was like even keeled, calm. Gifted student that would just sit back and watch us all do like just watch the idiots unravel, essentially. But anyways,
was it like both parents equal disciplinaries, or was one more than the other? Wait till your father gets home.
I mean, that threat, I don't know about you guys, but like that threat, yeah, definitely held true. But I remember my mom washing my mouth out with soap if I swore or something.
Yeah. That's an actual thing, huh?
I got that at school.
You got that? Yeah.
That's cool. Not for my parents, but my teacher made me go to the washroom and go eat some soap.
Did you? Yeah.
And I remember doing
it's horrible.
it.
It's bad. Man, that's bad. So, it's kids these days. They don't know what they have. Yeah.
Oh no.
But yeah. What about you guys? Caesar, you got some soap. Stan,
I got whippings. Right.
What'd you get whipped by though?
I got whipped by a Chinese feather duster.
Yes, the feather duster. I think every Chinese person watching this of our generation is terrified of that feather duster.
Yeah, man.
That bamboo side of the feather duster.
I gotta look at. I gotta like.
You Google it. It's like it's every Asian kid's nightmare. When you see the feather duster, you don't see it as a duster. You see it as a weapon.
That's exactly how I see it. Like when someone uses it for dusting, I'm like, no, you're holding
the wrong way.
The wrong way.
Oh, it's you hold the feathers and you hit the handle. You use the handle.
The handle is a bamboo stick, and then the feathers on the other side. And when people hold by the feathers, because I only know what it's like to hold it by the feathers. I don't know what it's like to hold it by the bamboo part, because the bamboo side is what we get hit by.
Yeah. Right? I'm like, feather's so nice. It's nice and soft.
So soft.
That's the handle part.
Exactly.
Right? Like I had to hold my hand out, and they'll just like whack it.
Yeah.
And there was one time, I don't even know it was something academic. I think I failed a test or something, and I just got railroad marks up and down my legs, both legs,
for failing a test
for something. And I think it was like in grade 4. It was nuts. Like that traumatized me. Like it was.
Just thinking about that, it's just like it raises all the hairs on my neck.
Like it was very traumatizing, and it did set a precedent on how my relationship was with my mom. Right? Like after that, I knew like I had to keep her at like arm's distance, and this is from a kid, right? Like I never let myself get close to her, right? Like I know I wanted some sort of relationship with her, but I never seeked it out, right? I knew back then that the way I wanted a parent or the way I wanted like a family, it's never gonna happen, right? Like it's a fantasy, Stan.
So it was your mom that was the predominant disciplinary person.
Yeah. Like I said, my dad, his dad, my grandfather, left China when he was young. So he didn't really grow up with like a male role model, right? So when he came here and had us, he's just like, okay, I'll just provide, I'll just make sure there's like some food on the table and some
Yeah.
money, and if you guys want a toy, I'll bring you a toy.
Yeah.
You know, that's about it, right? He didn't really care about how school went. He didn't really care if we, had any like sporting games or anything.
Right.
Right. It wasn't really his forte.
Yeah.
Right. But did any of that discipline style get transferred into how you discipline your kids?
Yeah, I think the definitely not the hitting.
Let's make that clear. We don't hit our kids.
No, definitely not that. But the some of the anger that came through when they would hit us would be like, sometimes that like flares up and you're like, okay, that's, I instantly recognize that, like, that's not cool. So I can see that sometimes come through when I'm like really angry, and I'm just like, that's when you walk away. But yeah, no, you can feel the emotion, but it never really goes beyond that to the kids. Yeah.
You don't. So what I'm trying to get at is the generational trauma, right?
Yeah.
Like, for example, when I got disciplined, I was never allowed to talk back, right? I was never allowed to defend myself, give any reasons, this and that. I had to just live in my shame and receive my punishment. And I find that sometimes when I'm talking to my kid and they want to say something, and they do, I would just shut it down.
Yeah.
Right. I don't let them explain themselves. Well, I do now. Like I realize that, and as they get older, they want to explain themselves more often. And I do ask them right from the get-go, before I fly off the handle, what happened.
Yeah.
Right? Like, calm down. Tell me what happened. But before, I did realize that I was disciplining them the same way I got it. Right? They would just sit there, shut up, eyes wide, just be like, oh, let's just ride this wave out. And it wasn't until I saw the look in their face that I kind of like had to step back. I was like, oh shit, am I my mom?
Did you feel like the look on their face was what you felt like you looked like when you were a kid?
A little bit, right? Like, there was one point where he said, oh yeah, like the way mommy yells at me is totally different from the way daddy yells at me. Daddy's so much more scary.
Interesting.
Right? I'm like, what are you talking about? It's like, oh, I remember this one time you yelled at me and I was like shaking. I was like, you were shaking? And that's kind of when I realized, like, oh shit. Okay.
How'd you feel when she told you that?
Heartbroken.
Yeah.
Like, I failed them.
Yeah.
Like,
I get that feeling, man.
like, I was like, there, I just traumatized you.
Yeah.
I got it. Thanks. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Give me a hug. Oh man, I'm so sorry.
It never feels cool, like blowing your gasket, like right after you're like, oh man,
yeah,
it's not a good look.
It's not.
No,
And
it's not constructive either. Truth
No.
be told, for anyone, right? Like,
So that's the thing. So like, if we're talking about disciplining and all that, before my wife and I got together, I always imagined as a parent, I never wanted to hit my kid. Like, that was something I knew I never wanted to do. But I came from a martial arts background. I did a lot of martial arts when I was a kid, and up until, I currently still do martial arts. But I remember when as a young adult, I was saying, okay, when I have kids, the way I'm going to discipline them is if they step out of line, they got to do like 100 push-ups. You guys, the original Ninja Turtles? And when the turtles did something wrong, Splinter's like, okay, go do 10 backflips.
Yeah,
and
I
they go off the
remember
wall and they flip off the wall and do backflips.
Michelangelo and Raphael.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the scene that I always imagine. Like, okay, for my kid, it's gonna be like push-ups, or they're gonna hold a horse stance for like 5 minutes.
Oh my God.
Until the legs burned.
It's a horse stance.
Horse stance is essentially just like you sit low in the stance, almost like a squat.
Oh, okay,
And you
gotcha,
sit there for
yeah.
like 5 minutes, and till your legs burn and all that. And then to step it up, I like put a little candle under them so that they can't.
Oh my
So
God.
Jeez.
they set their pants on fire if they go too low. This was me as a young adult, and
All
that's
right,
the way
yeah.
I imagined that I would discipline my kid.
Yeah.
And then I met my wife, and my wife's much more compassionate than I am, and much more loving and caring than I am at that age. And I told her this, and she was like, "You can't do that." you can't like that, like the amount of trauma you would cause the kid. And that was the beginning of me understanding what it meant to traumatize my kid. Because, you know, when we really talked about and we really dissected, what are you trying to achieve by disciplining them? What are you trying to achieve by punishing them? All you're really doing is creating fear and creating a scenario where they're not going to want to come to you with their problems. We all make mistakes in life. We all screw up. As a kid, as an adult, we all screw up. And if you want a relationship with your kid where your kid doesn't feel safe coming to you when they screw up, that's not a good thing.
No.
You know, your classic situation is your teenage kid in high school and they go to a house party and they get drunk and they get stuck there, and instead of calling you to say, you know, I need a ride home, they're going to go with their friend who's also drunk and get in a car and then get into an accident, right? Because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to be like, I don't want to piss dad off because he's just going to yell at me, he's going to discipline me, he's going to punish me. That's all you're really creating by kind of disciplining them in a harsh way like that, by creating that fear. So I've kind of completely reevaluated my approach to disciplining my kid. And to be honest, I don't like to even use the word disciplining my kid anymore. I rather just talk to them about it and kind of let them know what I think about the situation. Then they can give me their feedback, and then we can hopefully have a mutual understanding of what the proper next step should be.
100%. I feel like a lot of the guys, a lot of the, we call it the toxic masculinity guys, they hold up their war wounds of, hey, I got hit when I was a kid, right? But you know what? I deserved it.
Yeah,
you know,
they justify it.
It's like this whole Stockholm syndrome thing. It's like, oh, I love my mom for kicking my ass when I'm like, and exactly what you were saying. Like, is there not a better way to discipline you? Like the kids these days, getting timed out are such an easy thing for them. Kids don't care. Kids don't weigh one punishment over a different. They just just know that they are being punished, and that's it. They're sitting in their shame, right? It's like sitting in a dirty diaper. Nobody likes it, right? And that's what's going through their mind, right? A punishment's a punishment. It doesn't have to have that physicality to it. It doesn't have to have that pain aspect to it.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I agree with you there. I mean, I guess I was the one who was, I was the displaying a bit of toxic masculinity, your definition there, maybe. But
I didn't mean you. I'm sorry.
Yeah, calling me out on the podcast next time. No, but it's all good.
I got whipped too.
Yeah, it's okay. But well, I mean, just to challenge that thought though about not needing to discipline them. It's like you look at the other end of the spectrum, and there's, it sounds like our kids are all pretty young, reasonably well behaved. But what about the ones that are, maybe struggling a lot more, acting out a lot more? Maybe there's a whole different spectrum that discipline does apply to in that case, right? Like,
it's tough. I mean, I think I don't have that much experience in the pediatric population, but I do see a spectrum of really challenging kids, and whether you want to attach, a medical diagnosis with it or a psychiatric diagnosis with it, that's one thing. I still can't think of a good reason for doing the physical disciplining.
Oh no, I'm not suggesting physical.
For sure.
I'm just like a harder, maybe more harsh disciplines, taking things away.
Right. So I think that this is
punitive,
where,
right?
This is where that's why I try not to use the word disciplining, because I think disciplining has been associated by a lot of the physical stuff, right? So I think when you're trying to, I guess, change behavior.
Mm-hmm. Guiding them.
Yeah, like what does it take to change their behavior? Sometimes you have to take a little bit more drastic methods and all that. I'm not an expert at that. I'm not going to try to pretend that I know what to do in those situations. So the answer is, bottom line, I don't know. I don't know how to answer your question, but I think I would try my hardest I try my hardest to be as mindful as possible to minimizing further traumatizing this kid, because I suspect the kid that has really challenging behavior already is traumatized. They're acting this way because they probably are traumatized to a certain extent.
Yeah, it's probably acting out. They're probably asking for something in an indirect way, right?
Now, I mean, there's obviously going to be certain neurodivergent kids that it may be just part of the diagnosis and the behavior from that, and certain people on certain spectrum disorders and all that. That may be just how their brains function, brain functions, and how it's wired. And there's definitely a lot of experts that can support them through that. I definitely don't think those kids need to be disciplined, because I think it's part of their innate behavior and how they cope with their environment and all that. But any specific behavioral kind of things that are not connected to any kind of disorder, I think I would try my hardest to not further the trauma.
Makes sense.
Yeah, no, but that's really hard when you see a kid that clearly needs a little bit more guidance and structure, right? And he's not getting that.
Yeah.
Right. At my company, we offer co-op placements for high school kids.
Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
And being in the area that I am, there's a lot of working class families, and just like me growing up, there's not a lot of parenting going on, right? So I do see these young impressionable kids coming in, and as soon as you give them like a little bit of attention and a little bit of review and guidance and structure, they thrive on it. They're hungry for it, you know? But then as soon as they leave, you know, they revert back to who they are. Teachers will come in and say, "Hey Stan, how is that kid today? Is he showing up?" I'm like, "Yeah, he's showing up every day and he's like doing his work." He's like, "Oh, really?" You know, the teacher is surprised. He's like, "He's not a really good student." I'm like, "Well, he's a great worker." Right? Right. So like,
But that's the thing. So I think sometimes people, not just teachers, parents, whoever, they put these labels on kids. You're a bad student. You're a bad kid. And, you know, I think the more a kid hears that label on them, they start identifying with it. They'd be like, well, maybe I am a bad kid. And it becomes their narrative, and they're going to fulfill that prophecy because they've been told their entire life, you're a bad student. I think that's such a missed opportunity for whoever was their role model, whether it's a teacher, whether it's a family member or whatnot, could have changed that narrative. And I think for me, you know, I'm not sure if, you know, as a kid, I think it's very common in the Chinese community to say, are you a good kid or you're a bad kid? So in Chinese, it'd be, are you know, 乖仔啊, or 曳仔啊? And that's just a very kind of nonchalant way of adults communicating with kids. Are you a good kid or you're a bad kid? And you have to choose. Am I a good kid or am I a bad kid? And if you keep being told you're a bad kid, you're a bad kid as a kid, you're likely gonna believe it and think that you're a bad kid and then just act like a bad kid.
So tell me a bit about this. Is it
playful? Is it
playful or serious?
Yeah. I think it's neither. It's about the judgment and how you're being perceived as a child. So if we were to use, let's say, appearance as what they're judging you on, then they walk in the door and they say, "Oh, you put on weight." So and there's no hesitation in that. They'll just say, "You look fatter now."
It's like void of the emotions of that might elicit from someone.
Yeah. It's a matter of, this is how you are appearing right now, and this is the image you're giving off right now, and maybe in the culture, and I can't speak because, you know, I was born here, so I'm raised in the North American culture. But I think in the Western culture, it's seen as rude. It's seen as, you can't say that. You can't say that to somebody.
Yeah, that was kind of my instinct. I was like, oh, that's abrupt. Like,
right,
yeah.
Exactly. So that's how we were treated as when we were kids. And I mean, even to this day, like, you know, I'll have my older family members come up to me in Chinese, be saying like, "Oh, Caesar, you put on some weight," or, you know, "Oh, Caesar, you look so tired all the time." You know, I'm like, okay, thanks. But, you know, it's, you know, I think obviously me growing up in the North American culture, I take offense to it. And I'll be like, "Why are you judging me? Like, what does it matter to you?" But as a kid, you call me are you a good kid or you're a bad kid? I take it in as, oh no, I want to be a good kid. Am I acting as a bad kid? So I'd obviously say, oh, I want to be I'm a good kid. But, you know, there are some kids out there that are constantly being told, you're a bad kid, you're a bad kid, you're a bad kid. And they internalize it, and then they just say, okay, they give up, and they'd be like, okay, I guess I'll just be a bad kid. I'll just be disruptive and do all the things I'm supposed to do because I'm a bad kid.
Yeah. One important concept, just to like layer on that quickly before we move on, was there's a difference between who you are and your core self and your behavior of that moment.
Yeah.
And sometimes like, okay, you had bad behavior in this point doesn't mean you're a bad kid.
Right.
So there's a distinction between you and your behavior.
Yes.
So sometimes it's useful to pull those apart.
Right, they don't. Yeah, as a kid, from cultural perspective, they don't separate those things. It's the label you're given, and then when you get that label, it sticks with you, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard. I mean, every time you have an individual failure, you don't blow it up to be everything about you, and it's just that was one personal. That's one little aspect,
Yep.
And it can be corrected, and you can not like that little aspect, and then just let it go.
Right.
But as soon as you make it totally about yourself and is something that's attributed to you, then it's will stick with you a lot longer. So.
Totally. But to follow up on the idea of trauma and kind of passing on generational trauma and all that. My experience is not so much with the disciplinary stuff as you mentioned, Stan. For me, I think the trauma I experienced was the feeling of being useless. I think that was the
That's a very universal feeling.
that was the narrative that I felt as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That I couldn't achieve, I couldn't amount kind of the accomplishments that that I was meant to. And
Compared, probably.
a lot of comparison, a lot of you should do better, you should know better kind of thing. And it led me to the point of a lot of isolation. It made me feel like I couldn't ask for help, because if I ask for help, that means that's another opportunity for them to say, well, that's another thing you can't do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that narrative carried out throughout my entire childhood, young adult life, even to my current adult life. I'm still kind of dealing with that trauma. Kind of, imagine imposter syndrome as a kid. I can't even be good enough as a kid, and that kind of carried out through my entire life. And the reason why I want to bring that up is because, if we're talking about how do we not pass on that trauma to our own kid, I think it's so important to acknowledge that you experience that trauma and try to process it, whether it's with your partner, by yourself, or with a therapist, to process that trauma, so you understand. You kind of go back to that state, I kind of try to go back to a state when I was like 6 years old, 7 years old, where I start feeling the feeling of
uselessness.
Uselessness,
right?
like
that constant
so the Chinese term would be moyong, and in the direct translation is you have no use. And you hear that over and over again, and so you feel like I'm useless. I have nothing.
That label or that term, moyong, would actually be used to describe
a person.
Yeah.
A person, but your parents would actually use that to describe you.
Yes.
So it'd be like instead of when we're saying like are you a good kid or bad kid, it'll be questions. Do you have any use? And then if you make a mistake, if you break a glass in the kitchen, you'd be labeled you're useless. And that'd be just like this thing that would just kind of be build in my head and all that. I'm like, I just can't do anything right.
Mm-hmm.
I can't achieve anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I kind of had to process that as an adult and all that. And then now that I have my own kids, it was so important for me to address that trauma in myself, and this is another reason why, I went to see a therapist and all that, is to kind of to process some of these feelings that I had as a kid. And I had to go back to that stage when I was that 6-7-year-old kid, hearing that label on me, and me as an adult talking to me as a 6-year-old saying, no, you're not useless. You're a 6-year-old. 6-year-olds are allowed to make mistakes.
100%.
6-year-olds are allowed to forget, their jacket at school and their mittens at school, and you're not useless. And I have to sit with that and kind of, tell myself and recover from that feeling, so that I don't pass that on to my kid. So that when my kid does leave their mitts at school, my kid does leave their jacket at school, I'll be like, oh, it's okay. Sometimes we forget. I forgot as a kid. Let's try to think of a way to not forget it next time, instead of saying, how could you forget it? Like, how can you be so irresponsible, kind of thing. And I sometimes have to kind of check my mind to not say that to my kid, because that's what I heard from my parents or whoever my role model was as a kid.
Might instinctually just come out, as a gut reaction to it.
Yeah, especially if I'm like, it's a really tense moment, we're late for school, or the adrenaline's up. Sometimes I feel like it almost comes out, and I have to kind of really check myself and make sure it doesn't come out.
I would have let it slip. There are times we have very similar traumas, it seems. Maybe I should go to therapy. But yeah, growing up, I was labeled that, and there are times where I would talk to Winter, and he always loses his water bottles. I don't know what it is. It's just one thing after another. Even if I give him
he's a kid,
a branded one that he loves, I know in 2 months it's going to be gone.
Maybe you shouldn't buy him expensive water bottles.
I'd never learn it's my love language.
There you go.
There you go.
But going back to what you said, you told your kid how when I was a kid, I did this. I find that really helps ground you as a parent, as a person, right? And it shows your kids that, hey, you weren't born a dad, you were born a kid just like them. I find that really helps with breaking this generational trauma.
Yeah.
And I do that too. Like when Winter has a tough time learning something, doing math, writing a report, at the end of the day, and I see him struggling and I see him succeeding, and I tell him how proud he is, I always go and tell him, hey, when I was your age, I was so much dumber. I didn't know how to do this. You do like math in your head. It's great. I'm so happy for you. But yeah, it helps with his confidence and his self-esteem. And I see that he does need that boost.
Yeah.
And we need to be the cheerleaders for our kids, right? As much as we want them to be better, we can't just pick on the negative and work off of that. We have to, be this shining light that puts the spotlight on them and raise them up.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's universal that everyone who's young is going to have a lot of insecurities. I mean, until you're in your early 20s, you don't have too many skills and too many things to offer, and you really are, not to berate it, but we are fairly useless at that point. Like, we're just kind of, being taken care of, learning the ropes. It takes a long time to get through your adolescence and become a productive member of society. But does it mean you're useless or worthless? No. Certainly not. Right. So I think it's whatever we can to scaffold up the self-esteem and confidence is a really valuable thing for everyone who's going to be going through it, right?
Yeah, and
everyone growing up, I should say.
Totally. I don't know where I heard this. I think it must be one of the kind of motivational podcasts I listen to. But it's the idea that confidence is something that you have to get externally. Confidence is something you get from yourself. You as an adult, maybe, because you have some track record of your accomplishments prior to whatever that kind of gives you the confidence. But as a kid, you haven't accomplished much. And even if you have accomplished, you need someone else to tell you that you've accomplished it. Like a kid learning to walk, it's a huge accomplishment, but to them, it's like, well, everyone walks. So they need that boost from us. They need that boost from us. Say, yeah, I'm proud of you for doing that. That was a big step in, learning to write your name on your own, doing that new trick in gymnastics. Like, it's to them, it's like whatever they're doing right now is kind of expected of them. And I think it's up to us to give them that confidence, to give them that feedback so we can build their confidence. And then eventually that's going to build their self-esteem when they become adolescent, teenagers, young adults, and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it doesn't even have to be so much as really dramatic steps either. I think
Right.
like slowly building your confidence of like doing little things every day.
Yeah.
You're like, okay, you get out of bed, you get through all these tasks, you're getting to school on time. Great. Like you get home, you know how to cook, you know how to do some like little basic things, you know how to clean, and you slowly build up your confidence and your ability to work every day. And like you slowly build up these skills as well. And I think helping them grow along that path of developing competencies, because as your competencies grow, your confidence and your self-esteem will go.
Yeah.
And the sooner you can help someone go up that like learning curve,
Yeah.
the better off they'll be,
Totally.
which is
Yeah, they need to recognize that too, right?
yeah, you're not
'Cause-
like a CEO doesn't just start up there.
Yeah.
That's a carefully groomed path that they've been
Yep.
building on social skills,
Yeah.
mental skills, a whole bunch of different things their whole life to get up to that point.
Yeah, totally.
I think Caesar, you kind of took that in part 3 there. You led into it for me, but which is great. So I think it was like, how do we stop when some of these issues were coming up? How do we break that cycle? And I think that's kind of what we've been talking about. This last little segment.
I think it's a time like when we are exhausted, when we've like just like end of the day, you have no more mental capacity to kind of bring out your best version of yourself, and then something happens, and your kid says something or does something that kind of puts you off. I think that's the highest risk time for you to kind of have your instinctual behavior come out. And sometimes that means going back to the things that you really didn't want. Like, for example, for me, it'd be, things that I really try hard to not replicate from my parents.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm on my game, I'm, fully alert and energized. I can be very intentional with what I say and what I do. I can really kind of watch what words come out of my mouth, how I'm acting with the kids. But the time when I'm exhausted or, just at my wit's end, sometimes I revert back to my instincts. And sometimes that is the way my parents were. And, there's certain ways that I want to treat my kids differently than when I was raised. And okay, now how do I reverse this
Yeah.
trauma now that I've kind of put on my kid?
Yeah, that cuts to the core, man.
Yeah.
But I think it's normal. That sounds like a pretty normal cycle to obviously want to do better than what your parents have. Like, I think the goal of every parent is to see your kids do better than you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you want the day when your kids are like more established, healthier, more physically fit. Like, I don't picture a better day than that, right? When
Totally.
it actually comes around. So I think that's like, all that to say is I think that's a normal want and need that you're probably trying to process right now. Like we all are, I think.
Right.
Very similar.
I said before, I grew up with the same taunts as Caesar, and it wasn't until recently that I had that affirmation that I was doing okay. Like I'm a good representation of what I wanted to be, right? Like I was talking to my brother-in-law who is 12 years younger than me, and I've met him when he was like 5. All right, so we were talking about how he perceived me first, like what was his first memory of me, because I've kind of been in his life forever, and he came out and said, "Oh man, like I looked so highly on you," and I still do. I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Oh, you were so cool. You had this, you did that." And like, I just wanted to like be like that. And it like blew my mind. I never realized that this kid would idolize me
Yeah.
in this way. 'Cause I think so highly of him, of
Right.
where he is now, how he like he moved from city to city to city, and he's doing great for himself. Like, and and in turn, he's like, "Oh man, like I want to be like you." I was like, "What the heck?" Right? And there's a couple of instances where people would give me that compliment, and it just like made me feel so proud of myself. I don't know. I'm just tooting my own horn here.
No, that's great. I think getting that reflection from somebody else, right? Because
Yeah.
I think all of us, to a certain extent, unless we're like, you know, super narcissistic, I think we all think of, you know, like ourselves as I am I doing the best I can? Could I do any better? And getting someone else to kind of tell you that they look up to you and that they see you as a role model, it's kind of like, oh wow, I guess I am doing okay.
It's like, Jesus.
Yeah, that feels good when it does come along. It's not that often as an adulthood that you get that,
It's
but
not.
you know, the external validation. But but for me, the high risk, obviously, not so much like the high risk times of when I'm gonna like lapse into some of those same, like, you know, getting upset and yelling. I think some things culturally that I think I'd like to break the cycle on is a lot of alcohol. It's a very common thing, obviously, in like Western culture to drink. It's always in like, you know, Mad Men, like everyone's drinking whiskey and stuff. And it's just like, it's not a healthy way to relieve stress at the end of the day. So it's like, if you're stressed and you're, you know, that's the last thing you probably need. It's like, you know, getting out to exercise, making sure that you're exercising in the morning or in the evening, and making sure that like that's a much healthier way that actually, you know, is a step that I can do that would obviously break that cycle and obviously give me more skills to help cope with my kids. So
Totally.
I think that's something that I'm actively trying to focus on.
So, okay, we started talking about love, and then we got into this like really dark place. Let's go back to love.
Yeah.
All right, let's have a love sandwich.
Full
All right, let's go full cycle. All right.
All right.
What are some of the things that your kids say to you that reinforces their love for you, that you know that they love you? Okay. One, I'll start. Summer always wants me to play stuffies with her. All right. And she just wants my time and my funny voices. With Winter, he always wants to like play fight with me. Right. And I know because of those interactions that I'm loved, that they love me.
Yeah. Do you tell them that you love them and that they say it back to you every day?
Yeah.
Or like
Yeah.
in
I
addition
love
to that,
you,
yeah.
I kiss you. I hug them. Right. I tell them I'm proud. I make sure, you know, I try to learn all the languages.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is them telling me that they
Right.
love me
Yeah.
in their language.
Yeah.
So how do your kids tell you they love you in their language?
My youngest, she makes me carry her out of bed every morning downstairs in a blanket, like for breakfast. Yeah, every morning. Yeah.
That's amazing.
She
I
won't
love
get out of
that.
bed. It's
I
cute.
love that.
It's a bit tiring. And then the middle one, we always every morning we end up doing like Wordles together. She just likes coming up and doing Wordles, connections, and mini crosswords with me. So it's like, it's pretty hard because she doesn't have too much experience to like
Yeah.
lean on for the mini crosswords. Like, who's this character in Seinfeld? Like, she's not going to know. But she just enjoys doing it with you.
Yeah.
And then the oldest one, you can tell that she always just wants to chat at the end of the night. It can be a bit painstaking at that hour. But God, I love her. But she always just, there's never an ending call back to her room at the end of the night. So, but pretty amazing.
Yeah. I mean, there are many ways that they show me that they love me, but I think the two most consistent things that they do, one is going to be, and it's almost a test that I actually kind of do, where I finish at the end of the night, after I finish cleaning up the dishes in the kitchen and all that, and the kids are doing their own activities, I will mentally know I'm going to go to the couch and I'm going to lie on the couch and I'm just going to time them to see how long it takes for them to come over. And then usually it's within like 30 seconds. They see me lying on the couch and they grab each other and they come and they just want to sit on me and cuddle me, continue whatever activity they're doing. And they just cuddle me on the couch. And then the transition then is to go upstairs for their nighttime routine. And as painful as it is, what I usually do is I go to the staircase and I put one foot up on one of the steps, and the second they see that, they know, okay, it's like daddy jungle gym time. And then they will then both come and climb up on me and both sit, one would sit on each shoulder, and I'd carry them upstairs, and then I throw them on the bed and we get into this pillow fight, and that lasts for like 10 minutes before we start the bath time. And that's like kind of our consistent pattern out of our end of day kind of routine. And yeah.
Pretty sounds like a pretty awesome routine. But what I took away from this was that you're a very capable dad. You just did the dishes. You just finished up making dinner, doing the dishes, lie down for a sec, and then you're right off to the bedtime routine. I was like, damn, Caesar.
Yeah,
it's like,
well,
I'm exhausted just listening to it.
Holy shit.
Well, so the interesting thing is I am exhausted when I do it. But then when they do it, especially when they do the climbing onto me, they both sits on each shoulder. I think to myself, this is going to end pretty soon. They're turning 7 and 5 this year, and this may be the last year I can do this.
Yeah, soak it up.
I just no matter how tired I am, no matter how much pain my shoulder is, my neck is, I just got to do this because this, especially my older one, like this, and I tell her every time, you're getting really heavy, but I'm going to keep doing this because soon I won't be able to do this anymore. And I know 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, I'm going to look back at this time and you're like, man, I missed that time where they were jumping all over me. I could carry both of them on my shoulders and do that. So
what was that Robert Munch book? I'll like you forever. I'll love you for always.
Yeah.
As long as it's like kind of like that, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You know what the sad part is? That you will never know when that last shoulder ride will happen.
I know.
It's gonna come one day and you think, it's just a shoulder ride.
Yep.
But that
Yeah.
it was the last one.
Yep.
And you won't know about
Yep.
it.
And I dread that day because it's going to be that day I'm look back and I'm like, that was the last time. Last time I held their hand. Last time they sat on my shoulders, and it's going to break my heart.
Yeah, it'd be tough. Let's not think about that. Enjoy the present.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I don't want to dwell on that stuff. That's too painful. Yeah. Yeah. That's some healthy compartmentalization, I think.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, it was a good conversation with you guys today.
Yeah, on that note.
Yeah, it was. Thanks for kind of taking part in that, and it was really nice
that was a lot of fun diving into somewhere a little bit darker.
Yeah.
Right, and I think everybody learned a little bit more about us.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you looking at me for? Man?
I don't know. I'm looking for support.
Yeah, I'm
man.
thinking a bit more about this guy. Shit. Yeah.
I'm looking.
I learned.
Yeah. Hold my hand.
Yeah, I'm here for you. Learned about feather dusters.
There you go.
Mayong. Moyong.
Which I'll never say that to you.
Yeah. Okay.
You're a very competent person.
Thank you. Very capable. Yeah.
Very capable.
Very capable.
Yeah, we're not the Moyong dads.
Exactly.
We're the capable dads.
Anti-Moyong dads.
Ho Yao Yong is what they would say.
Ho Yao Young.
That's very, very useful.
Very useful. Lots of utility in these three.
That's gonna be our next shirts.
There you go.
Yeah.
In Chinese. You'll be like, what's that say? It says very useful.
I'll get that tattooed on my arm, right?
All right, thanks guys.
All right.
All right, signing out.
See ya. Stan, you make me a sandwich when I show up to your house, and I'm really hungry, and I really appreciate that because coming to your house, I was so hungry, and you made me a sandwich. I'm like, damn, Stan, you really love me.
That's never happened, and now I will have a sandwich waiting for both of you.
So
My love language might be very different.
there you go.
Oh, okay.
Might be physical touch. So sorry, Stan.